Welcome back to our next session, and we're going to be talking about some terms that are in the text. So I just want to cover them. You may or may not be familiar with some of these terms. The first one, it's not Latin, that's French, called laissez faire. Laissez faire is a synonym, it's a French term. It's a synonym for the free market. It tends to mean, very loosely translated, hands off, or let it be, or leave it alone. Those are all fair translations of this French phrase. But laissez faire is a synonym in economics jargon for let people alone, let them make their own decisions, don't protect them, don't subsidize them, just keep your hands off of them. That's what we mean by laissez-faire, and it's a synonym for the free market. Now, free markets, a free market inside a country and a free market between countries, has its greatest macroeconomic benefit to the poorest citizens or the poorest people in the economy. The free market tends to help those on the lowest echelon of the standard of living within an economy or between two economies. It helps free markets help third world countries a whole lot more than they help first world countries, for instance. Free markets also favor consumers at the expense of producers. Free markets also favor consumer interest to the detriment of producers. Now, just as the free market tends to be of the greatest benefit to the poorest people, controlled markets tend to help the richest segment of an economy. And controlled markets always wind up favoring the best interest of the largest economic players. And in our world at this point in time, it's the large international corporate special interests. So who's always in favor of manipulating, controlling, regulating markets? It's not the individuals, but it's rather the special interest that can gain some monopoly power inside an economy. That famous fellow from Cleveland, Ohio, you probably recognize his name, John D. Rockefeller. You're probably familiar with that at all. John D. Rockefeller, no, from Cleveland, Ohio, oil industry, broken up. One of his statements was competition is a sin. Competition is a sin. Now, sin means not the right way to do things, going in the wrong direction, something that would be hurtful rather than helpful. So what did he mean when he said competition is a sin? Well, from his perspective, he needed a large, very large corporate entity to get economies of scale and efficiencies that the individuals couldn't get, and he wanted monopoly power to do that. And again, he was broken up by some political process that was fueled by citizen interest during the antitrust era, the Teddy Roosevelt era. But competition is a sin. And this word, laissez-faire, is almost synonymous with lots and lots and lots of competition. Anybody can get into any business that they want. That no one's locked out because of race, color, religion, sex, nationality, heritage, or anything. There's no government regulation saying, well, you're not big enough, or you're not on our special list or something. The competition thrives here. Now, I'm bringing up controlled markets versus laissez-faire because of something that our text calls globalization. Globalization. What does that term mean? Does it mean something on the side of natural and free and spontaneous, laissez-faire, or does it mean something like artificial and coerced and highly regulated and born of special interests? Popularly, that word globalization is synonymous with outsourcing, but the word means, and I'm quoting from the text, increasing integration or economics, increasing integration of cultures and institutions across the world. Increasing integration. Integration is you bring things together and you make them part. If I integrate my cell phone with my cell phone holder, I'm putting them together. I'm adding them together, making them one unit. I'm integrating them. So if globalization means increasing the integration of economies and cultures and institutions across the world, it begs a question. What do you do with some people and some cultures who just don't want to be integrated? No, I'm perfectly happy where I am. I don't want to enter into any trade agreement. You can come and we'll trade, but if I don't want to, I don't want to. And no, I thank you, but no thank you. What do you do with individuals, or what do you do with nations who don't want to be globalized? Really only two answers. First answer, you just leave them alone. First answer, laissez-faire, hands off. If they don't want to come to your party, you don't have to come to my party. I might try to convince you to my party, maybe tell you all the good things if you come to my party. But if you want to come to my party, you don't want to be in this global trade deal, well then, it's free world, I guess, laissez-faire. That's option number one. Number two, rather than leave them alone, you force them to get with the program. You force them to get with the program. And that force could come in many, many flavors. It could be trade sanctions. It could be calling them names. It could be creating some sort of hardship by moving commerce or talking to all their trade partners and say, well, they're not playing ball with us, and so I think we ought to just leave them alone and don't let them have access to some world markets or some sort of coercive way of getting things done. I'm bringing that up because this month, June of 2015, the big thing in the news is something called a TPP, a Trans-Pacific Partnership with 11 nations, a bloc that would represent about 40% of the global economy. And I just pulled that out of the news yesterday, just because I was looking for something that talked about globalization. Now, if somebody in Mexico wants to trade avocados and sell avocados to somebody in Texas or Ohio, anything wrong with that? If they want to do that, should they be allowed to do that? In a world of laissez-faire, the answer would be, of course, yes, yes. In a world of globalization, well, no, no, no. You see, we have to set down the terms of this agreement, and we're going to have to talk about what currency you're going to use in the payment system, and whether you're going to allow to use our roads or not, and whose list you have to be on, and I don't know. Why do you have to have a partnership to do something that people and nations naturally do on their own? And the point I'm making is that what we call globalization, what our text says as the integration of economies, the integration of cultures. Yeah, you're of one religion, I'm of a different other, but we're going to work this out. You're of one kind of economy and we're of a different, but we're going to force this thing to get together. Whenever we use that or coercion. We're not talking about laissez-faire. We're not talking about free markets anymore. We're talking about somebody setting it up so they are a special interest and they get a better end of the deal. Because free markets, free trade will happen automatically. We do not need trade agreements in order to make that happen. I'm arguing that free trade actually forces people or forces nations into a kind of trade that they wouldn't voluntarily do otherwise. If it was in their best interest, they would do it if it's in their best interest. I just want to bring that up, but the other thing I could mention is that any nation, and I'll say our nation, that has roughly 800 military bases all around the globe. Any other nation have 800 military bases around the globe? Not to my knowledge. The best I know is maybe China or Russia or something like that, or some other country might have one or two, but we have 800. $500 billion a year roughly to maintain those things out there. Do you think they could be used for something other than protection of our borders? Could they be used economically for coercion, for some sort of force? Even if it's a big club on our shoulder, they're a threat. I mean, if it wasn't our nation, I'd feel, What if Russia or China, let's pick on China, what if China had 800 military bases around the world and we had 2? Would that change the way we think a little bit when we do business with China? I think it would. And I think that we have to get out of our shoes sometimes and get into somebody else's shoes to really appreciate the status of what's going on when we talk about globalization. We're going to stop there. We're going to pick up the next session with the law of one price and arbitrage.